Welcome, friends. I'm very, very happy that after a very long segue, we are getting back on track with something that has always refreshed me. And I always looked forward to these little Wednesday night soirees or little evening salons, these workshops, exploring just great ideas, just ideas that have a universal quality to them, and just discussing it, talking it through. I think it's really good for the soul, and it's been a shame that life has just sort of derailed some of that flow. But we're getting back on track. Chatted with Quan, said, "Hey, you want to do this? You want to start this reading back up, and maybe next week?" And he's like, "Well, why not tomorrow?" So here, today is now tomorrow, and I asked him yesterday. So we've already done 3 readings of Ku Hongming, the lost Confucian scholar, highly underrated as we've come to discover, whose ideas really are at the cutting edge of what human beings should be thinking about if we want to actually think about a society which is morally fit to survive and in harmony with natural law. Obviously, right now the fires of propaganda are at their max, of the matching the worst of the Cold War propaganda machine. We've accelerated in some cases beyond that in terms of like demonizing nations of Russia, of China, in preparation for manipulating the zeitgeist of the Western population to expect or even maybe demand activities that will lead towards an actual war that only a few think is a good idea. This could be a war of vast annihilation for many generations. So we really need to be equipped to understand how we've been duped, how these narratives are framed. And one of the narratives is this question of Chinese are intrinsically, genetically atheistic. They don't believe in God. There's this type of messaging that's promulgated again and again to dehumanize, or to at least create a crux, or this glass ceiling where one pious people are above the ceiling looking down upon a lower subhuman order of people, which is resulting in a lot of destruction to the minds, powers of judgment, souls, and also general security of the earth, because there is something that is a deep lie. And when, I think everybody here has listened to either the previous readings and discussions or some of the classes by Dr. Quan Le that's been delivered to the Rising Tide Foundation over the past 4 or 5 years, there is a profound common thread of natural law that has emerged at the best of times in both Chinese and Western tradition, which you have to be sort of epistemologically at least a little bit more developed than somebody just trapped in the cave to appreciate some of those elements of the battles for goodness, and how we've at times, too often, um, allowed the worst part of ourselves in both Chinese history as well as in the Western cultural matrix to dominate, and to then thus be duped to act according to our own self-annihilation. It's not just external oligarchs that can be blamed for the dark ages that we fall into, the wars and the divide to conquer tactics that we've fallen into from time to time, but as Shakespeare said, the fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings, and that element of ourselves, the free will element, is very important. So Ku Hongming is somebody who had a sensitivity to a lot of these dynamics of the human condition, of political and especially educational dynamics, since that's always been the challenge of how do you create an institution that can encourage the best of us in the next generation, and that can promulgate itself and become better with every generation. So I've been very happy to be introduced to Ku Hongming. I wish there was more of his writings translated into English, but until then, what we've got right now is a really good introduction that Quan found. So Quan, any remarks that you would like to say before we jump back into today's 4th reading?
I'm afraid that I will need 25 minutes to start my presentation today.
My friend, you're the maestro, and it's been a long time since we've done this, so take as much time as you would like.
Okay, so I would like to remind that what is presented with Ku Hongming's article or piece by Professor Wang is the classical education that has been given to the Chinese ruling class and the Chinese intellectual elite for 21 centuries. Matt said in a very right manner that the Western prostitute and propaganda would present the Chinese people as atheists or not uh, being people having a divine dimension, let's say. Maybe that misunderstanding has been facilitated by the fact that the Chinese people look down on people having mythology, precisely. And I don't want to be too clumsy here. And if you think that I'm clumsy, don't hesitate to come back after my speech. Um, the Chinese people, at least those who are educated and in the upper class, see philosophy as the explanation for the divine dimension and not revelation as understood in Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, the so-called Abrahamic religion. However, as you will discover in my presentation, maybe in 10 minutes, there is a kind of revelation in the Chinese metaphysical perspective. So I would like to come back to the fact that the Chinese classical education can be understood as a house. The first time I said that the house has a base and a roof. I did not reveal on purpose that there are three pieces to that house. And today I will talk about the first piece. Okay. So the first piece of that house, imagine it as a platform. And that platform is the Chinese writing system because the Chinese writing system is very special. And I will come back to that later on. And the the main part of the house is the famous square for those who saw my first, second, and third presentation. And that square is made by the four books, which is the epistemological explanation. The four books I explained at the first time, I think, about the general structure and about the Tashui, the great learning, and the Chongyong, usually translated as the doctrine of the mean, but I prefer to translate it as living center on infinite awareness. The other two corners are the Analects by Confucius and the Mencius. At the center of the square, of course, is an image of the hexagram, 6 lines symbolizing the epistemological development. And the roof of the house is a triangle made by the five classics. I don't want to repeat the names of the five classics because I already tackled that subject in the first 3 videos. Today, I want to talk about the Mencius, okay, one of the four corners, and a little bit about Confucius too. So Mencius was a Chinese philosopher born in 372 BCE and he died in 289 BCE. He wrote a book called Mencius according to his name. That book has 14 chapters. It can be counted as 1 to 14. There is another system which counted from 1A to 7B, okay, which is the equivalent of 1 to 14. I would like to say that chapter 1 and 2 are about the timeless form of truth. Chapter 3 and 4 are about the timeless form of goodness. Chapter 5 and 6 are about the timeless form of beauty. So if we go back to at the center of the square, I was speaking of the fact that there is a symbol in Chinese tradition that is called the hexagram, Hexagram, having 6 lines, as its name says. Okay, hexagram means 6 lines in Greek, and each of the line corresponds to a level of awareness. So beauty, goodness, and truth correspond to the divine kingdom or to the timeless reality, meaning the line 4, the line 5, and the line 6. That is the timeless dimension. Lines 1, 2, 3 correspond to the animal kingdom. line 1 being the sense perception, line 2 the intellect, and line 3 social sophistication. Once again, let's go back to the book by Mencius. So I talk about chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 concerning the three absolute universal timeless forms or ideas. In Greek, eidos, timeless form. Chapter 7 and 8 are about universal history. Chapter 9 and 10 about the good society. Chapter 11 and 12 about the intrinsic or innate goodness of the human nature. And chapter 13 and 14 about the epistemological journey that will bring you to from the animal kingdom to the divine reality of beauty, goodness, and truth. Of course, I want to be nuanced. When I say that chapter 13 and 14 are about the epistemological development, it is the main subject of chapters 13 and 14. But in chapter 13 and 14, you wouldn't find other stuff, but the main subject is about the epistemological development as the main subject of chapter 1 and 2, as I said 2 minutes ago, is about the first timeless form of truth. So the Confucianist religion is not a revelation religion as understood by the Abrahamic religions. However, there is a revelation, okay? And that revelation is what I call the major Confucianist metaphysical thesis. And that metaphysical thesis is the following: the intrinsic and innate goodness of the human nature, and that is made by the four seeds. And in the
Say that
Mencius,
again. Say that again.
the innate goodness of the human nature is made by the four seeds, okay, the four grains, the four seeds, seeds.
Okay.
So those four seeds are the thesis or the revelation of this Confucianist perspective. Because you are born as a human being, you are necessarily born with those four seeds. And the chapter in which you will find that stated very clearly is chapter 3.6 of the Mencius precisely, okay, meaning chapter 3, section 6. Those four seeds are discernment, respect, commiseration, and metaphysical shame. Why I take the effort to say metaphysical shame and not shame? Because it has to be distinguished from the social game of shaming, right? When in society people would say shame on you, it is a social manipulation to make you feel bad in order to have a control over you. But here, when I'm speaking of metaphysical shame, I'm not speaking of the social shaming game. I am speaking of the fact that shame will be spontaneously present, manifest, when you do something that is ugly. And if your soul is operating, if I may use the word operating for the soul, or if your soul is manifest, when you do something ugly, it should make you feel shame because it is the mirror of the soul. Okay, if you have a stain on your face and you look at the physical mirror, you can see the stain on your face. The mirror of the soul will show you the ugliness of your behavior. And if you still have your soul, well, everyone has a soul, but maybe some people forgot to have a contact with their soul. Okay, so if you still have a contact with your soul and you're doing something ugly, your soul inside you will show that it is ugly. So those four seeds, which is the metaphysical thesis of the Confucianist religion, or if I use the Abrahamic lexicon, it is the Confucianist revelation. Okay, a revelation is something that is given to you by a god, by a sage, by a philosopher king, and you don't necessarily understand everything at once, but you can start from that revelation and you can study, you can look in yourself, you can discuss, and you can live your life, and you will understand that revelation with work, with contact with people, and with reflection, obviously. Okay, that is why I call it the Confucianist revelation. If you have, I would like to remind something that I talked about last time about the Zhongyong, meaning doctrine of the mean or living center on infinite awareness. I will read again the first, well, I will quote from memory the first sentence. What has been ordained by heaven is our nature. To lead by our nature is called the Tao, and to cultivate the Tao is the teaching, right? So that first revelation that what has been ordained by heaven is our nature, meaning infinite awareness. But that infinite awareness has been understood as the four seeds. And those four seeds are what has been put in us because we are human beings. And because we are human beings and we receive a classical education, those four seeds will be transformed into what is called the cardinal virtue. If the seed of discernment has been developed and cultivated, if you want, it becomes wisdom. If the seed of respect has been cultivated, it becomes valor. And here, valor, you have to understand that it's not only physical prowess. Valor is also the capacity to explore the universe, the outer universe, and the capacity to explore the inner universe. So, valor here, the goodness or the good human life, has to do with understanding oneself, the others, and the universe. You have to understand valor by this. And of course, valor also has to do with physical prowess, but it's not the biggest thing when we speak about valor,
Could you call it
epistemologically speaking.
could you call it moral adventurism?
Uh, I agree with moral adventurism. I prefer to say moral journey, but it's a
Okay.
personal
Yeah.
preference.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
So and the seed of commiseration, when it is cultivated, becomes humanity. Humanity is also called moderation or temperance. Okay, you choose the word you like. And the metaphysical shame, when it is when it is developed, consolidated, cultivated, become justice. Okay, because true justice is not learned from books of laws. True justice is when the mirror of your inner soul, or your soul, your inner mirror, will automatically show you the ugliness of some ugly behavior that you might have. Okay, and it is from that that you will be truly fair. So, and over you know that wisdom corresponds to the timeless form of truth, because wisdom is truth expressed in time. Okay, because let's not forget that truth is the timeless form, but when it is expressed in time, it is called wisdom. And goodness is the timeless form once again, but when it is expressed in time, it is called valor and humanity. And finally, beauty, the timeless form, which is invisible, but when it is expressed in time, meaning when it's become visible and manifest, it is justice. Wow, it's beauty. The timeless form of beauty is much more than justice. But why the Chinese insist on justice? Because justice is the highest form of beauty. Okay, but you can have all the form of beauty, physical beauties, the art, the architecture, the sculpture, the science, etc. Obviously, but uh, the Chinese insist on the highest form of beauty, which is justice. That being said, uh, let's not forget that the four seeds is the manifestation in time of the timeless form of truth, goodness, and beauty. Meaning that once again, you have being and becoming, okay? But between the two, you have the overture to being, in the sense that we humans, we belong to a special animal species, that we are not limited to the time dimension, but we are capable to reach to the timeless reality. And the adventure, the epistemological adventure to that timeless reality is that overture. Okay, as I said, I call it Bob. B for being, O for overture, epistemological overture, and the second B for becoming. Okay, so it's essentially what I want to say about Manzi, which is the Chinese way to say Mencius. Uh, Paradoxically, before talking about Confucius, I want to mention briefly another philosopher born around the same time than the Confucius. Confucius was born in 551 BCE. The guy that I want to talk a little bit about was born 7 years later in 544 BCE. And all of you know him. He's Sun Tzu, Master Sun, okay, because of the art of war, of course. For those who read the 13 chapters of the art of war seriously and sincerely, they realize that it's not about war. It's about the republic. It's about the city. Okay, the Mencius has 14 chapters. The Sun Tzu Ping Fa has 13 chapters. I would like to read in Chinese first the first sentence. Okay, Sun Tzu Yue, 并者国之大业，死生之地，存亡之道，不可不察也. Of course, I wouldn't translate it for you. Master Sun said, military affairs are the great endeavor of the state. It's about life and death. It's about the way to prosperity or to destruction. It is a subject that you cannot neglect to investigate and to inquire thoroughly. Here, I would like you to replace military affairs by the life of the republic, okay? Because the life of the republic is the great endeavor of the state. It is about life and death. It's about the way to prosperity or to destruction. It is a serious matter that you cannot neglect to investigate and to explore thoroughly. Because once again, the 13 chapters of the Sun Tzu Ping Fa, or The Art of War by Master Sun, chapter 1 to chapter 3 is about tempus, the timeless reality. Okay, it corresponds to chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the Manzi, who were dealing with truth, goodness, and beauty. Chapter 4, 5, 6 of the Art of War is about kairos, the epistemological overture. So it corresponds to chapter 40, 13 and 14 of the Manzi. And the rest, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, is about chronos, okay, the time dimension. And it's about chapter 7 and 8 of Mencius, universal history. So 9 and 10 of the Mencius, the good society. 11 and 12, the innate goodness of the human nature. Why I want to make a rapprochement between those two? Because the absolute Confucianist revelation is at the center of the three philosopher kings that I wanted to talk in my 25 minutes tonight. Once again, the Confucianist religious revelation is that we have a human good intrinsic nature. And at the beginning, why do we have that good intrinsic nature? It's because as we have been endowed with two eyes, two ears, one nose, and one mouth, we have also been endowed with the four seeds of discernment, respect, commiseration, and shame. which, when they are appropriately developed, becomes wisdom, valor, humanity, and justice. Now, I want to talk about a little bit about Confucius.
Can
Was
you
born in,
before you talk about Confucius, could you just restate those 4 points again? Respect, commiseration, shame. But what's the? I'm missing one.
oh yes, sure. So the four seats first: discernment transform into wisdom,
Right.
respect transform into valor, commiseration transform into humanity, moderation, or temperance. You choose the word you like, and beauty the timeless form, but the seat of metaphysical shame, transform into justice.
Good. Thank you.
No problem. So Confucius, then born in 551 BCE and died 72 years later in 479 BCE. Confucius is about precisely the hexagram. And for those who already know that, I apologize, but it's an important point. So I want to repeat that again. Okay. So I said that at the center of the square of the four books of the epistemological development, you have the Tasue, the Great Learning, the Chongyong Living Center in Infinite Awareness, the Lun Yu, the Analect of Confucius, and the Mencius. In chapter 2, paragraph 4 of the Analects of Confucius, you have a synthesis of the epistemological development using Confucianist vocabulary. So the first line is at 15 years old, I devote myself to learning. Okay, that is the sense perception. And from there, you devote yourself to learning. That is the epistemological way of speaking. Politically speaking, it corresponds to the commoner, because for the Chinese, of course, it is the ideal situation, all right? It is the adventure of Chinese civilization. I'm not saying that we have it in a perfect manifestation, of course not. But that is the standpoint from which you have the adventure of Chinese civilization, meaning that your social position or your social status correspond to your epistemological development. So the first line corresponds symbolically at 15 years old. You understand that those ages are symbolic, and someone can be still at 15 years old symbolically, even if that person is 60 years old chronologically, of course. Okay, I think that it's obvious, but I want to take some time to explain that. Okay, it's not chronological age, it's symbolic epistemological age. So at the symbolic age of 15, 1-5, I devote myself to learning. And that epistemological stage corresponds to the commoner, politically speaking. The second line corresponds to the intellect. At 30 years old, I take my stand in society, okay? Meaning, politically, it corresponds to the petty officer. At 40 years old, I'm no more confused, epistemologically speaking, and politically, it corresponds to the officer. So those are the three lines of the time dimension or the animal kingdom. You have a space between the three lines of the animal kingdom, which is called in Chinese the lower trigram, because it's made of three lines, the trigram, and it's the lower one. And you have a space. That space corresponds to the classical education, okay? At the third line, I'm no more confused, okay? I'm no more confused in the sense that now I am socially sophisticated. I can navigate within my society, but there is something more important in the meaning that I'm no more confused. I'm no more confused in the sense that I realize that I belong to a special animal species that live in time, of course, but also lives in timelessness. Okay, and that is the major point of I'm no more confused. And from there, when I'm no more confused at 40 years old, symbolically speaking, I will go on a classical education by myself. Okay, here, Some people, because they are born in a certain kind of family, will receive a classical education when they are 5 years old. But why Confucius chose 40 years old as a symbolic age for starting your classical education? Because Confucius gave the message that even if you receive a classical education when you were 5 years old because you were born in a certain family, in general, you wouldn't be mature enough when you would reach symbolically to 40 years old to really take that adventure as your personal adventure. And even if at 5 years old, you understood many things, uh, at, at 40 years old, symbolically, there is a personal decision that would make that second phase of the same epistemological adventure more profound, if you want.
At the
I
age
think,
of 5 years old, you could not have put it to the test.
no, exactly, exactly. So you got enough human experience, let's say at 40 years old, symbolically, to decide that, well, you know the expression that we only have one life, but the moment that you realize that you only have one life is the moment that you wouldn't get your second life, right? So, and that 40 years old, symbolically speaking, it's your second life. Or if you want, the Indian classical education would call the Brahmins the highest class, those who are born twice. Okay, but if someone is truly born twice, it's not the fact that he has been born in a Brahmin family. It's the fact that he realized at some point in his chronological life that there is a timeless dimension, that there is a divine reality, that is truly to be born twice, or that you realize that you truly have a second life. That being said, that classical education will bring you to the timeless dimension. And once again, as I said, but I won't repeat that, the timeless dimension start with line 4, okay, the first line of the upper trigram, the three lines of the upper part, and that correspond to the timeless form of beauty or the cardinal virtue of justice. The fifth, and Confucius would say that at 50 years old, I am capable to hear the will of heaven. Okay. And I remind everyone that the first line of the Chongyong, what has been ordained by heaven is our nature. Okay. So at that symbolic age of 50, you are capable to hear the will of heaven. At the fifth line, the line of goodness, Confucius would say, I am capable to hear the will of heaven without complaining. Okay. So at 50, you hear the will of heaven, but you still have fun to deal with. You have many hobbies and you have stuff to do. Okay. But at 60 years old, symbolically, you hear the will of heaven and you don't complain. You know that it is truly your nature. Okay. And you know that you want to go into your nature. And at 70 years old, I'm capable to do what I want without infringing the universal laws, meaning that there, symbolically, at 70 years old, you in truth, you in that infinite awareness that is your true nature. And because you are in your true nature, you will spontaneously do good, and everything you do, of course, will not infringe the universal law because there is a perfect harmony between the vertical reality of infinite awareness and your life in time, let's say, in the animal kingdom. Uh, so that is the epistemological development. And I want to remind again, and that is the Confucianist revelation that human nature is that infinite awareness and that we can reach to it through a classical education or the epistemological development. The other thing that I want to say about that, I will finish my presentation with this stuff, is a special paragraph of the Analects, and that is paragraph 14.39. Because 14.39 is very special for me, and I think it will be very special for you too. Um, I wouldn't find it. Okay, I found it. Okay, so I want to read it, and I want to explain it after. Okay, the master was striking musical stones. Okay, you know that in ancient China you have stone that you would hang, and each of those stones correspond to a musical note. So the master was striking musical stones. I'm sorry. A man passed by his gate, holding baskets from a pole. He said, "What heart there is in the playing of those stones." Okay, so you have to understand that in ancient China, uh, it is understood that when someone is playing an instrument, the feeling, the emotion, the mood of that person would be expressed in the way that that man would play the instrument. Okay, that is, and I think that Westerners have the same intuition and the same insight, of course. Okay, so then he said, "How uncouth this clanking! If none recognize you, then simply give up." Okay, so he was mocking a little bit Confucius, because Confucius was known during his time to visit different rulers to explain his reform program and blah, blah, blah. And most of the time, he got rejected because the rulers were not interested to be aristocratic rulers. Most of the time, they were plutocratic rulers, of course. So the guy said to Confucius, I perceive that the way you play those musical stones, that you are a little bit depressed. I understand. I know your life story. You got rejected many times, and come on, you're not recognized. Just forget about it and just have some fun. Okay, that is what the guy said to Confucius. And he said, when it's deep, you wade straight through. When it's shallow, you just lift your skirts. Okay, so it means just go with the flow. Okay, once the water is deep, you wade straight through the water, and when it's shallow, when you lift your skirts. Okay, and Confucius' answer, is it really so? There's nothing hard in it. Okay, so of course that in life you would not necessarily be acknowledged or be recognized. It doesn't mean that you have to stop your epistemological journey because you don't do your epistemological journey primarily to be acknowledged. You can be acknowledged, of course, and so much the better, of course. But you might not be recognized too. Okay, and if you're not recognized, you're not doing that for the others. You're doing that to go back to your infinite awareness, to go back to your true nature. Okay, so that's one. And the first layer of interpretation would propose that Confucius said to the man essentially the following: it's in my nature to keep on. There's nothing hard in that. It's not entirely wrong to think so, but there is a deeper reading of the vignette. Okay, the passer, in a nutshell, told Confucius to relinquish his aspiration. He suggested to Master Kong that if the society does not acknowledge him, just be relaxed with that. Don't be sad, and just go with the flow. The ditty in the paragraph 14.39 is just perfect for conveying that mentality. When it's deep, you wade straight through. When it's shallow, you lift your skirts, meaning that you will get wet anyway because the waters are deep, or when it's shallow, you have the option to lift your skirts. So go with the very down to earth reality. Don't fight either to be completely uplifted epistemologically or translating that mind epistemologically, it is a lifelong endeavor into lasting political, social, economic transformation. Just be clever enough or street smart enough to look for the signs of the times or the zeitgeist and go with them. Okay, that is the advice of the sophist. Okay, the man at line 3, the highest man of the animal kingdom. Because, as in the allegory of the cave by Plato, that is when you are unshackled within the animal kingdom. Okay, I know I already said that, but it's important. I want to repeat that again, maybe for the 10th times. Once you unshackled within the animal kingdom, it means that you are at the highest of the animal kingdom, rank 3. From there, you have the choice to go with the plutocrats on the platform to play with the puppets to mesmerize people, or you have the choice to keep on your epistemological journey to the divine reality. Okay, so it is exactly that crossroad that is about in that paragraph 14.39. Okay, it corresponds more or less to the allegory of the cave by Plato. So that sketch evokes uncannily the metaphor of the platform Plato used in his dialogue, the Republic, showcasing the moment of our personal adventure when we are unshackled within the animal kingdom, stage 3 of the epistemological development, and invited by the plutocrats to join them on the platform, playing with the puppets, creating shadows on the wall, for mesmerizing the democratic man still shackled to the senses perceptions. Okay, because I think everyone understood that the fact to be shackled in the allegory of caves is to be shackled to the senses perception. What is understood as Taoism in the West is exactly what has been expressed by the man in this paragraph 14.89. Okay, I have the pretension, but I'm not going deeply into that today. But true Taoism is very close to Confucianism. But however, the Westerners understand Taoism as uh, an invitation to laziness, flippancy, irresponsibility, and mediocrity. Okay, so I would like to say that what is perceived as Taoism in the West is the wrong kind of Taoism. I close my parenthesis in my apology for Taoism. I'm coming back to Confucianism. So, what with that background, Confucius' reply is much more valuable, even heroic. Confucius said, "It is really so. There is nothing hard in that. So there is nothing valuable to stay only in the animal kingdom, the lower trigram, and not making the needed efforts and even sacrifices to go to the timeless reality, the upper trigram." Confucius invited everyone to go deeper, notwithstanding social success or social failure. That's not the criterion. The criterion is true self-knowledge, remembering unwaveringly that your true face is the face given to you by the whole before your parents were born, remembering your original face, your face from the source, from the timeless reality. And Confucius said in the Analects, cultivate yourself. Socrates said in the Phaedo, take care of yourself. Okay, it's two different ways to say the same thing. Remember who you truly are.
Are you using the word faith? Faith?
No, face, F-A-C-E.
Fate. Fate.
Face, F-A-C-E. Face,
Face. Thank you. Okay.
face. Okay,
Okay. Okay.
that's a Chinese way to say your
Yes.
true nature.
Okay.
So, or yourself with a capital S if you prefer. And Confucius said, cultivate yourself. And Socrates said in the Phaedo, take care of yourself, which is two different ways to say the same thing. And I stop here.
Bravo.
Yeah, that was good. And I'm gonna actually make that a standalone lecture. We'll record this whole reading, but this by itself was meritorious of just being a standalone presentation. So thank you, Quan, for that
Agreed.
that wonderful overview. Ken definitely shares my enthusiasm there, and I think we all do.
Well, so maybe we could just do a little parsing on what
Sure.
Quan's delivered here
Yeah.
and make that tonight's episode, and then we can move on back to the goo thing next time or something.
Oh, I mean, I'm down to read an hour of Hongming. Would you guys like to read it an hour? We're at what is it? 8:51. So we could do an hour. Usually we go to till 10 o'clock.
Well,
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
yeah, me too. Me too.
All right,
Okay.
two questions. All right,
Well,
Elisa, then Ken. All right.
I have to go in 5 minutes,
All
but
right.
I'm not saying this to be rude. I like to ask people from different cultures direct questions so that I get an answer from the direct person. But people talk about China and saving face all the time, and then making evaluations on whether Chinese are saving face or not. How does that link in with what you're saying?
Good
I am
question.
very great. I'm very grateful for your question because I was speaking of the lower trigram and the upper trigram, right? There is a phase of the lower trigram and there is a phase of the upper trigram. Okay. And when I was speaking of the phase from your source, from the timeless reality, that is the phase, FACE, that has been given by you by the home before your parents were born. To be precise, the small phase or the phase of the animal kingdom is called mianzi in Chinese, Mianzi, mianzi. That phase corresponds to your social status, to your wealth, to your lineages, to your power, to your influence. Okay, so everything about the animal kingdom. So that phase is correspond to what the average Chinese or the average Eastern Asians, because it's not only Chinese, it's Japanese, it's Vietnamese, it's Thai, it's Lao, it's Cambodian, it's Koreans, etc. So that phase is Mianzi. It corresponds to the phase of the animal kingdom. The other phase, Lian, Lian, pronounced at the third tone, is the phase corresponding to your epistemological development. Okay, it is the phase of infinite awareness. I agree with you that most of the time when an Eastern Asian when speak about saving his face or the face of someone else, sadly, it's about the face of the animal kingdom, of course. But I invite people to save their second phase, the phase of the timeless reality is much better.
That's good. Well said. All right, I
Bravo.
like that. All right, Ken, go for it.
Sure. Okay. So first of all, man, have I missed this? Just saying. And wow. I'm good. It's going to take me a while to really um, absorb all this. However, I did want to say that in the interim, we had this presentation on, I believe the name was Chiang, this ancient Chinese economic philosopher. Do you
The
know,
Guanzu, maybe Guanzu.
was it Kwanzaa? Okay,
Yes.
I've forgotten the name, but I was really, really blown away by that. That really shook me up because the intricacy of his economic understanding is like 21st century. You know, it's just incredible, and I can't wait to dive back into that and to really get a better handle on that. But Quan, I want to ask you this. Um, the term heaven is extremely important in understanding the overall, let's say, the Weltanschauung of Chinese wisdom, or of the Chinese metaphysical perspective, and yet it doesn't really ever come with a definition. And I wonder if you would attempt that for us tonight, speaking to people who don't come from a Chinese orientation.
Heaven is the timeless reality.
Okay, but when you say the mandate of heaven, for example, there's a suggestion in that heaven has an active role to play in some way. Heaven is not just passive. It's not just a passive paradigm. It's something that's interacting with the.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's what I would like you to address.
But Ken, if I may be so bold
Mhm.
and impertinent, I would like to ask a quiz question to you. I gave the answer how heaven, the timeless reality, will interact with the timed reality when I gave my little speech 25 minutes ago. I was speaking of the four what?
The four seeds.
Exactly. That is the revelation of the Confucianist religion or the Chinese religion. Okay. Heaven, the timeless reality, is present in all of us under the seeds which are always active. Okay, imagine them as seeds because the metaphor is perfect. But those seeds need to be cultivated.
So
So
are you okay? Are you saying then that heaven is the what's the word here? The I'm missing the word. The aggregation of all of the developments of all these seeds. Is that what it is?
no, heaven is the timeless reality. Heaven is the invisible, and we are manifesting in space-time energy matter.
Yeah, okay. So
Space-time energy matter is the animal kingdom. The
but what I'm
link,
trying to understand is there a conception here that there's an entity of sorts that is represented by heaven, or is it
okay,
simply
okay, 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 I see. I hope that I wouldn't be diplomatic in my answer, right?
Mhm.
When China was in the former dynasty, like the Shang dynasty, having started in 1600 BCE to 1046 BCE, and the Zhou dynasty from 1046 BCE to 256 BCE, there was a heavenly god which was called Shangdi, and Shangdi can be translated in English as Almighty Lord or High Lord. And with the Chao, it became Tian heaven. Okay,
thank you. No,
but
that's what I needed to hear. Thank you so much for that answer. That
but
that
and here I would be a
uh,
little bit undiplomatic because I would take the advantage that we are
mhm.
in a distinguished group of open-minded people from the Chinese Empire, though that heavenly God was perceived as primitive. The
As
Chinese
what?
scholar as primitive.
Uh-huh.
And the Chinese scholars think that the fact that you have a kind of impersonation of the
Mm-hmm.
high principle of good truth, goodness, and beauty
Mm-hmm.
is not as good than understanding the structure of the universe as being um, nourished and activated and dynamized by the timeless form of truth, goodness, and beauty. Okay. In my article on the aristocratic man, I invented an acronym for that. I call it DEBBIE. Okay. DEBBIE. DEBBIE is a dynamic, eternal being booming in entelechy. Okay, it's a complicated word, but
Wow.
but but that acronym that I coined, Debbie, is the
Mhm.
answer to your question. Okay.
I understand. I understand. Yeah, no, thank you for that. I appreciate your answer.
Okay?
Thank you.
So from the empire, the
Mhm.
Chinese scholars thought that it would be better to see the supreme as Debbie rather than the Almighty Lord or heaven. Even if heaven,
Because they felt that was too anthropomorphic in a way, or
exactly. The
okay,
Chinese scholars thought that it was too anthropomorphic, that
okay.
it's
Yeah, no,
better to
I
have
get that. I
abstract
get that.
concepts.
Sure. Okay, cool. Thank you.
However, in the general population, they kept on venerating the equivalent of a heavenly god
Hmm. Hmm.
impersonated in a
Hmm.
person, okay, living in
Hmm.
heaven. But I'm sorry to be clumsy here, but it
No,
was
no, no,
looked
no.
down. But it was looked down by the upper class and by the scholars. I stop here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey Quan, has there ever been any good in your assessment studies, comparative studies of Plato's Republic and Sun Tzu and the Art of War? Because I mean, you made a great point today in a broad thumbnail sketch that this involves not simply the art of war practically, just like Plato's Republic is not the art of building a political republic, but it's really also implicitly, if not explicitly, I'm not sure. I've never read the Art of War. The cultivation of the soul and the harmonization of a proper civilization in order to understand what he's saying, as which also has obvious military applications. But there's a much deeper metaphysical quality to this book than I realized. So do you know if there's been like any good studies of this question, this comparison of Plato and Sun Tzu, or is this still yet to be done?
I think it's still yet to be done.
Hmm.
I would be maybe I would be stimulated to make that comparison precisely. That would be
Mm.
a good subject for a book.
Yeah, that would be nice. All right, I love it. Well, we'll be happy to run that on the Rising Tide Foundation and spread it far and wide. Should that happy day ever happen? um,
Now,
Yeah,
yes,
the more
because
so,
my title would be The Art of War by Sun Tzu or the Chinese Republic.
that's a great title. Yeah, that's a wonderful title. Okay. Okay, cool.
yeah, it would be good to have because in the West, Sun Tzu's work is definitely interpreted as a book of war,
Hmm.
Yes, but the
learning the rules of war, and that's it. There is no,
Well, both
spirituality.
Plato and Sun Tzu are highly misinterpreted as being these malevolent
Yeah,
intriguers, and I think
yeah.
that being able to reinfuse some higher nobility into both men's characters and the practical applications of what they were doing would be really really useful. Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
Yeah,
but most of sorry, go ahead,
Plato,
Bob.
sorry, Plato as the originator of fascism, for example, is a very, very tired meme as far as I'm concerned.
Oh God, I'm getting so sick of that at this point. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
everywhere. It's everywhere. 90% of the people who know the name of Plato immediately associate it with evil, fascist, tyrant, killer, and just completely miss everything. All these wonderful lessons
mm,
that could be making them better people. And I'm sure the same thing
mm,
goes for Sun Tzu. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
Well, you understand what you can understand, okay?
mhm,
Because if you read seriously the Art of the War by Master Sun, it is obvious that chapter 1 to 3 is about the timeless forms, and it is obvious that chapter 4 to 6 is about the epistemological development or overture. Most people would remember chapter 7 to 13 dealing with the more practical stuff. I even wonder if people truly read chapters 1 to 6 of the Art of War.
mm. You think they just jump straight into the later chapters to get the practical like let me win the
yeah,
Yeah,
game?
yeah, because I know that the Art of War is read at West Point, but according to what I see of U.S. Policies, they did not understand the Art of War.
That's funny.
Not to bring up another rabbit hole, but there's an interesting similar controversy around Machiavelli. Just saying, okay.
Mm. Hmm.
Some people argue that he's actually not, the malevolent, you know, uh, dogmatist or the malevolent pragmatist that
mm,
he's presented as. That
Hmm.
you know there were.
Well, a very simple suggestion. It doesn't have to be now or this year, but we can one day read together the Art of War.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
let's do it. Yeah, or at the very least, you could select some of what you think would be the most wise selections from it. I'd
Would
be
be
happy to do
would
that.
be would be chapters 1 to 6.
Yeah, the ones that everyone
Yeah.
skips. All right, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, and
Sure.
similarly, I think for Machiavelli too. Yes, okay. Mental note. Let's do that. That's on the list now. And for Machiavelli, Cynthia had done a deep dive on his discourses on Livy,
Mhm.
and really came out of it with a completely different understanding, because we both went in with with the popular interpretation of Machiavelli
Right,
as being,
right, right.
the prince as all he was. And it's like when you read the Discourses in Livy, the real
Yeah,
Machiavelli comes out, because the difference between the prince
yeah,
and the Discourses on Livy is that he wanted the Discourses on Livy to be read and published, whereas the prince was a very specific manual for a
right.
very specific patron that he
Yeah.
was
Yep,
writing for, to help this figure do battle with real practical, real world
mhm,
fights against the Venetian oligarchy that was
yep.
subverting Florence and so many other things. And but when you read the Discourse in Livy, a much more beautiful, sublime soul really shines forth.
Well, so I think I was just thinking that,
Mm,
that you could almost do it like a three-way comparison there with
mm,
Machiavelli, Plato, and Sun Tzu, as people who are more misunderstood than understood. You know?
mm. Yeah, yeah. It's not a bad idea. Honestly, it's not a bad idea. I would start with it with just the Sun Tzu and Plato, since the concept of the Republic and the art of war is so clearly, and the fact that one has what is it? One has 13 chapters, the other has 15 chapters, and also Mencius has 14 chapters. I love that I mean, that might be my little internal Kabbalist screaming forth as like, hey, that's awesome. But that is interesting as well, as far as a numbering series. But that would be great. And then you had to add in Machiavelli into that sequence of the Gestalt would be a fun
Yeah.
exercise eventually to do as well.
Yes, and
I'd like to,
more fundamentally, all were divided by three, corresponding to truth, goodness, and beauty.
Ah,
Mm.
yeah. Ah, yeah.
I'd like to ask real quickly of Quan, how does Mencius intersect with Confucian thought? How does that history interplay?
Okay, so Mencius is a disciple who did not meet uh, Confucius because Confucius died in 479 BCE.
Mhm.
Confucius' grandson, Zisi, was a teacher of a guy called Su Shao. And that guy called Su Shao was the teacher of Mencius. So if you count
2 generations.
Confucius' grandson,
Yeah.
Su Shao, Mencius would be a disciple of the third generation
3rd generation.
of Confucius.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Quan, what do you think would be best? Should we begin the reading next week, or do you want to read a little bit tonight, or do you think that this is a good place to let the ideas just simmer?
I think it's a good idea to read at least a little bit because you will see that. Let's not forget that we dropped last time at the beginning of something that is called the Confucian principle of loyalty. What is the matter with political philosophy?
Okay.
Okay. And everything that I said that correspond to that because it's 9 and 10, we still have 50 minutes. So I think we can at least read maybe 6, 7, 8 pages because
Yeah,
um,
you're right.
what is the matter of political philosophy correspond very precisely to what I just talked 10 minutes ago.
That's very appropriate. All right, let's do it. So, Paul, can I volunteer you? Are you okay with that?
You can, but you're going to need to bring that print up on the screen a fair bit.
I can do that.
Look. I mean, since we last met, it'd been you get interruptions to life, but I had a holiday in Australia. I think I mentioned that I hated that and everything. But one thing that's happened to me here is that my computer died. So I'm dealing with a laptop. I'm getting a new computer built. I'll get all the information from the old hard drive, but I'm in kind of a no man's land at the moment. But so I'm dealing with a laptop. Things are a little bit different. The screen's not as big.
How is this? Is this okay, or do you want
Yeah.
like
I
Ken
can read
or
that.
somebody else to read? Yeah,
No,
you're okay.
I can read that. No problems. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Confucian principle of loyalty. What is the matter with political philosophy? Modern Western political scientists have championed the rule by many
AKA
democracy.
democracy.
Okay, yeah. over the rule by one, monarchy, tyranny, or rule by the few, aristocracy, oligarchy, as an unconditional ideal of government. In contrast, Goose seemed to echo Aristotle, who distinguished true forms, which aim to promote common good, from pervert forms, which aim to advance private and parochial interests in all three schemes of government setup. Aristotle, chapter 3, verse 7. Hence, there are more similarities between such true forms of government as modern European rational democracy and classical Confucian monarchy than between the true and perverted forms of the same scheme of government, e.g., between rational democracy and mobocracy. That's a fun word. I believe Goose's thesis is insightful. It also involves controversial and complex problems that need to be examined separately. In this section, I will defend the historical validity and modern relevance of Confucian loyalty and political philosophy against some typical criticisms. With timely revision and reformulation, Confucian religion of good citizenship predicated on the principle of loyalty that should prove valuable for contemporary moral and political discourse. It promises not only a royal path to true liberty and moral self-realization, but also effective remedy for imperfect political situations.
Yeah, I would like to interrupt. Here, Confucian religion of good citizenship predicated on the principle of loyalty. I would say that it's a lower principle, okay? Because let's never forget that the Confucian religion of good citizenship is predicated primarily on the epistemological development. And because you are at the high level of epistemological development, you would be capable to offer a true loyalty and not a loyalty based on subservience or on slavery of all kind of sorts. And a small pedantic remark. There's a fancy word which is equivalent to mobocracy, the power of the mob, and that fancy word is ochlocracy, and you can find that word in the Republic. Ochlocracy, Ochlocracy. I stop here.
Cool.
Let me first clear the. Sorry, I'll keep going.
Yep.
Okay. Let me first clear the charges by modern Chinese revolutionists who took Confucian loyalty as a slavish morality, instrumental to the authoritarian controls of the tyrants. In light of recent scholarship, neither the Chinese word zong nor the English word loyalty entails blind and unconditional obedience to authority. The original meaning of zong is personal commitment and wholehearted devotion, which requires proper remonstration to one's superior to follow the right path. According to the Confucian rule of ritual, when a sovereign commits a misconduct, it is the supreme duty of the state secretary to record it, the court musicians to chant about it, the three chief officials to come forward and advise against it, and the chef to reduce the size of the royal meal, so as to make sure that the sovereign cannot do wrong.
Oh my God, this is hilariously incredibly important. I love this, and I'm gonna make a mental note of this whole section here. I'm gonna use this a lot.
Consequences for bad acts, eh? Accountability.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice because
Anyway.
it's true. Like the Confucians are given a really hard time for being like super slavish, like he said, of just being obedient to hierarchy and all of these things without the conditional aspect of what was just said clearly. And I'm wondering, Fang Dong, is this like, who is this Feng Dong? Is this coming from Mencius? Is this coming from the Analects? Where is this coming from? This clarity of putting the ruler's misconduct up to account.
No, that Fang Xiangdong is modern scholars, but what has been written as the accountability and the practical consequences, those come from the three books on the right, okay, which are own books from the time of the Zhou dynasty. I remind once again that the three books on the right are part of the five classics: the Zhou Li, the Rite of the Zhou, the Li Yi, Rituals and Ceremonies, and Li Ji, Records on the right.
Thank you. And can I ask you this, Quan? I have found great luck not luck, but effect in speaking to many American conservatives and Canadian conservatives who are very anti-Chinese in bringing up the insights of Mencius and his obviously his inspiration in not only holding the ruler accountable, but even to the extent of overthrowing said ruler if they are offensive to Tianming and instituting new rules which are more in harmony with natural law. And you know, it puts people it makes a lot of these otherwise reactionary conservatives pause a little bit because it does reflect exactly the same insight that was seen with the American founding fathers and the writings of Jefferson. So it's a nice humbling experience. But could you tell me, because I couldn't if somebody were to ask me like where in Mencius do I see that? I
Yes.
don't remember which
Okay,
part of
so
Mencius's writings. Could you?
the easy way to remember is
Yeah,
the metaphor of the boat and of water.
yeah.
Because in the Mencius, in the part concerning universal history, so it's I won't check. It's probably in chapter 7 or 8. But anyway, you can find it very easy on the internet when you write Mencius, the metaphor of the boat and the water. Because Mencius used a metaphor that the people are the water and the ruler is the boat. Is the boat is not behaving, the water can capsize the boat.
Mm,
Okay,
that's good.
and that is the metaphor of the Tianming of the mandate of heaven, meaning that the ruler have the authority, of course, but as long as he obeys himself to the instructions of the mandate of heaven. Okay, so if he's a good ruler, it is absolutely normal that the ministers and the people would show respect and obedience to him because he's doing the part of a good ruler. But if he's not doing the part of the good ruler, uh, I think that Mencius would even say that if he's not doing the part of a good ruler, you cannot name him a ruler. He's no more a ruler. So by losing the name of a ruler, he also loses the status of a ruler. Then it justifies that he can be removed and replaced.
That's wonderful. Good.
Yeah, the duty of citizenship.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot
Exactly.
been spoken about. I've seen a lot of discussions about that, in relation to events in the world in terms of the American Constitution.
Yeah, and it's really great because it also um deals with this problem of nominalism where people think that something is true because the definition that we all agree to says that something should be interpreted the way that our dictionary or our encyclopedia says that something should be, and that's why the essence of the thing is the way it is. And it's like, no, that's not true. But Confucius had a better understanding when he was describing of like defining your terms and rectifying your terms,
Mm.
which is that the rectification shouldn't be just any arbitrary definition of what a tyrant is or what justice is, the way you might expect to see in some like Aristotelian crystallized set of definitions, but that it should reflect the essence of the ontological being of the thing itself. So that when he says that people have or that the ruler loses uh, the label, the nominal label of rulership, that is more than just losing the name of the thing. That's like that means that there's a deeper understanding that the ruler has abrogated their claim to have authority over
Isn't
anything.
isn't isn't this identical with the Aquinan teaching of if the law is an unjust law, then it needs to be disobeyed?
Yeah, but Aquinas was also getting that from uh uh Augustine, because Augustine was
Aristotle?
developing it in, I think, a better, more reasonable way than Aquinas was later on. That an unjust law is like a form of violence and
Right.
should be obeyed. But Augustine was doing it on much more firm epistemological grounding than Aquinas was later on. But yeah, totally. I think you're right.
Hmm.
Continue.
Yeah,
Therefore, Confucian loyalty is not a slavish obligation to cater to the personal wishes and interests of the superior. It is an aspiration to realize one's true being through critical and reciprocal process of moral transformation toward the common ideal of sagehood. Gu's own service to the king court personified Confucian teaching of loyalty and remonstrance in reality. For example, Gu declined a request by his supervisor, Zhang Zidong, to translate a selection of Western newspapers because he believed Western newspapers were fraught with rumors and misleading information.
Wow. No.
Misinformation. Seeing its potential harms, he insisted that he would not translate were there even a royal directive. While Zhang did not follow Gu's advice due to practical considerations, he did respect Gu's stance and asked somebody else to do the job. In 1902, likewise, at a grand banquet to celebrate the birthday of Empress Dowager hosted by the Hubei governor's office, Gu composed and chanted an anthem for caring people on the spot to openly criticize the improper use of public funds for this event. Long live the Son of Heaven. A lot of misfortunes for the average person.
Sorry for interrupting, Paul. I want to also say that not only Mencius used the metaphor of the boat and of the water, but what is important, I think it's more important that Sun Tzu, Xunzi, also used the same metaphor in the chapter 37 of his philosophical book, the Sun Tzu, bearing his name. Why I say that Sun Tzu is as important, even more maybe than Mencius, is because Sun Tzu was the teacher of Han Feizhi, and Han Feizhi and Li Zi were the main advisors of the first emperor of China. So next time, Matt, that you would meet those kind of people, you should say that the two philosophers who were the main advisors of the creator of the Chinese Empire, Sun Tzu, was also offering the theory of the boat and the water.
Yes, thank you.
Continuing. Second, Confucian teaching of loyalty is not to sanction the divine and absolute authority of the king. It is devised to circumvent everlasting power struggles and the paradoxical problems of political authority through a reciprocal process of moral transformation. Apparently, proper respect for legitimate political authorities are indispensable for the positive functions of all societies. But even in Confucius' day, it had become transpire that there could be no justification for political authority with a philosophy of entitlement. There was no way to stop the debilitating power struggles with the allegedly divine right of a king or even the so-called will of the people, let alone with the mechanism of free competitions of military or intellectual forces. Because there would always be skeptics who would take the authority based on such theories of entitlement as nothing but moonshines. That is why, for Confucius, the only viable way to sanction the political contract of allegiance, and accordingly all subsequent social hierarchies, must be the law of the gentleman with the sense of honor. As Gu elaborate...
sorry to interrupt. The sense of honor is an aristocratic expression, okay? But that aristocratic expression corresponds very precisely to justice, okay? When a gentleman say the sense of honor, what he means, at least a Chinese gentleman, what he means is the fourth line of the hexagram corresponding to the timeless form of beauty or the cardinal virtue of justice.
As Gu elaborates, it is this sense of honor, the instinctive, living, vivid perception of the life and soul of justice, that may inspire all citizens in a society to live up to their respective roles and responsibilities towards the common good. Hence, the root of justice, yi, as opportune distribution of different functions and utilities, must consist in ren, in the moral sense and social affection of gentlemen and gentlewomen inspired by love and kindness, and in their loyalty to the way Tao as nurtured by the process of true education, by the process of mutual belonging and transformation toward the common ideal of sagehood.
I stop. I stop. I would like to come back to the fifth line of that paragraph. You see E, and after that, you see the Chinese character, right?
Yep.
Okay. So that Chinese character E, pronounced at the fourth tone and meaning justice, the highest form of beauty, precisely. If you read Chinese, the upper part means beauty, and the lower part means me. Okay. The beautiful me, meaning the fair me. I'm fair. That is E, justice.
Isn't that a fascinating thing that fair and beauty here coincide?
Absolutely. In English, fair can be
Yes,
can
yes,
means, as you know,
yes,
physically beautiful, of course.
yes, yes.
That's
And
wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
yes.
Quan,
And so, yes.
I look at this hieroglyph and it just seems so elaborate. And you know what? I'm gonna refrain from acting like a dummy and seeming ignorant because it's just like to read a whole text with this wonderfully artistic imagery is it seems so daunting to my mind that you would just be able to see that and immediately see, okay, beautiful me, as a composite involves justice as a higher more than the sum of its parts, but yet needs its parts to exist. Synthesis. It's just so rich. I find it beautiful. That's what I'm trying to say.
And I want to go to the other Chinese logograph that we see, a run. Okay, run
That's
is
more
much.
simple.
Yes,
I can get
Yeah.
that.
yes. And a run, you have on the left side the radical for human being, and on the right side two. Okay, so a run, humanity is always in relations to the other.
To others. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
No
Okay,
man is an island.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, it means no man is an island. Exactly.
Mm. Mm.
And
Interesting.
and the third stuff that we can see, Tao. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 10 lines, Tao.
Mm.
So on the left side, you have the symbol for moving. And on the right side, you have that kind of square with two lines with a kind of stuff up above the square. It's for the head, moving towards the, the head. What kind of head? Moving towards the source.
Hmm.
Natural
Moving
philosophy.
towards the source.
Okay, the head for the fountainhead, moving towards the fountainhead.
Yeah.
Okay. Once again, I read again I quote again the beginning of Living Center in Infinite Awareness of Chong Yo. What has been ordained by heaven is our nature. Okay. To lead by our nature is called the Tao.
Mhm.
Cultivate the Tao is called the teaching. Okay, so the Tao, the character Tao means moving towards the fountainhead, moving towards the source, moving towards our infinite awareness, moving towards what has been ordained by heaven, our nature.
Quan,
Moving back towards being, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
would you
Okay.
say that there's any different, because I know that I was reading, and I know Michael Billington from the author at EIR has problems, especially in his 1980s and 1990s writings on understanding a lot of these things, and I think that he was probably overly differentiating the Confucian and Taoist systems a little bit too strictly. I've come to realize this after just listening to you and getting to know your teachings. But at the same time, it does seem to be that there is a slightly different ontology between the Taoist use of the term Tao and the Confucian use of the same word. And even though there's obviously overlaps too, that the way the ontology that there's some common overlaps. How would you respond to what I just said? Would you correct me, or am I wrong? or are there actual ontological or epistemological differences in these two interpretations of the word?
Okay, I think the best way is to answer according to what I have received when I was a child. Okay, I received a classical Chinese education, which is Confucianism, and I also receive an explanation of the Tao Te Ching, of the Chuangzi, which are the two main philosophical Taoist books. Okay, at at the scholarly level, at the aristocratic level, the Tao Te Ching and the Chuangzi are absolutely equal to the four books and the five classics. I think that Mike Berlin, I don't know him personally. I would make the hypothesis that his allergy to Taoism probably comes from his bad sources, in the sense that it's true that because Taoism is not as related to the imperial court, it has been less regulated. And there's a lot of mumbo jumbo that have been spun from Taoism. But what I can say to you is that the Taoism of high philosophical teaching from the Tao Te Ching and from the Chuangzi are of the highest epistemological quality and are the perfect equivalent to the four books and the five classics. And they are part of the classical education of the upper class of the Chinese people.
Yeah, that's good. No, I appreciate that. And I did notice that too, like having done over the last almost a year of just I've just been like looking way too much into, not too much, but I've just been looking a lot into occultism and reading a lot of writings of some very very nasty people. There is a tendency to see value from those who want to try to bring about some like nasty idea of a global uh world. There is an oligarchy that wants to bring about a hierarchical initiatory religious structure under a mystery or a revival of a mystery religion that do value Taoism. So I mean, I've been reading a lot of the writings of some of these representatives from a lot of MK Ultra, Tavistokian, very very nefarious networks in the West who love Taoism, but at the same time, they're probably looking at the lowest expression of the thing and not at the higher epistemological uh,
I, I
uh,
did, Matt,
representation of it. Yeah,
Matt, I did not even read that kind of mumbo jumbo, but just to show that I have some intuition, I wouldn't bet that they would talk about the yin and the yang, and because they would favor, for example, the eternal feminine, they would
yeah.
use the Taoist concept
Yep.
to push forward the eternal feminine or stuff like
Mhm.
that. Am I right?
Mhm.
There's a tendency towards that. Yeah, like that's more authentic, that the eternal masculine is this logical tyrannical energy that we have to free ourselves from through the feminine energy that they presume is like what is more natural. But
Okay,
even there, like
okay,
it's easy.
okay.
I just say I just want to say one little thing that I've observed when I read these people. Um, is that they're still ultimately chauvinistic because they're still mostly men who are promoting this, who ultimately want their harems of little sex priestesses of like wisdom oracles to be their servants, even though they try to act like these women are so grand and beyond them. It's not true, I don't think. All that to say, yeah.
Okay.
I think
Matt,
you're right.
Matt, I would like to take 5 minutes to read you the stanza 42 of the Tao Te Ching, right?
Yeah.
The Tao Te Ching has 81 poems. There's only one poem in which the expression yin yang is used, and it's the poem 42. And I want to read you the translation, and you will see that it's not the same quality. The number one of the way was born. A diet from this monad form, the diet next a triad made, the triad bred the myriad, each holding yang and held by yin, whose powers, balance, interaction brings all 10,000 to fruition. So those who take less shall have more, those given more shall have less. These words men have taught, and so shall I teach. Who live by might never do thy right. These my authority, my guiding light. Okay, so here you see that you have the basic theology, meaning that you have the one after the two and the three. And from the three, beauty, goodness, and truth, you have the many. And each holding yang and hand by yin, whose powers balance interaction brings on 10,000 to fruition. Okay, meaning that yin and yang are not separated, they are together. Okay, so when you truly understand classical Taoism, its high epistemology is not the mumbo jumbo that has been used by, let's say, misguided people at the best, or people with bad intentions at the worst, that would use some basic phraseology to spin their mumbo jumbo for their questionable intention and goals.
That's good. Yeah, I like that.
Matt, let me introduce one more thing into this conversation to help you with the Confucian versus Taoist conception of the way. Okay, this was shared with me by a famous Chinese scholar named Quan, who told me in private discourse that the Confucian approach is essentially a paternal approach. The Tao is pretty much the same thing from a maternal approach. And if you grasp that, then you understand how they're talking about the same thing from different angles.
Quan, would you add anything to that, or do you acquiesce?
No, absolutely. Because I would add the following. For a child to develop normally and healthily, a child needs the love of a father and the love of a mother. The love of father is not exactly the same than the love of a mother. So Chinese civilization is the child of Confucianism, which gave the fatherly love to the Chinese people, and of Taoism, which gave the motherly love to the Chinese people.
Yeah, that's good. You know, it's a a challenge for me at least, and I think for a lot of people to think about, like, we know that there is an ontology to masculinity and an ontology to femininity. Like, these are two separate things. But at the same time, like, a lot of people ask, like, well, how can we overthrow the male energy that has created all of the patriarchy of the West, that has imposed its will onto the weak, which is like somehow interpreted to be like intrinsically male energy, and colonialism and empire, and all of this is somehow male, and thus like restore the justice, the balance of the force of being like female feminine energy, which has been abused and subverted, which is more feeling based, not logical or thinking. But it's like, you think about it, it's
but
like Madam.
Matt, I would like to interrupt you because I think you already understood that, but I want to have the pleasure to say that, right? It's deeply looking down on the other people than to say that,
It
because
is. It is.
okay, the West are made by Westerners, and Westerners are human beings, and they have that masculine love given to them by their father, and they receive that feminine love given to them by their mothers. If in the past, centuries ago or 10 centuries ago, it doesn't matter, some Westerners had some aggressive behavior to other civilization, well, that's the responsibility of the other civilization to push back.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing, right? Like, I find it a bit, when I think about it for more than 2 seconds, which most people don't want to, like, I find that when somebody asks, well, was Madame Curie too masculine because she made her discoveries in science on so many domains, or was Catherine the Great more masculine because she like ruled in a firm manner effectively in the time that she did in Russia. And it's like, well, no, you can't say that's like it's because they were too manly. It's just like that, or was like a certain man too emotional because he loved his child too much and he was too nurturing. And it's like, no, we should all have like these elements in all of our hearts balanced well, whether a man or a woman, physically. You should have both of these attributes. But I,
Yes.
I find that the some of these people who abuse this philosophy overgeneralize it to become like some Manichaean universal attribute to the universe as a whole. And it's like, well, wait a minute, we didn't properly define what is a proper man or a woman. But I think what you've done here with this discussion of like Taoism being a slightly more feminine and Confucian as being a slightly more masculine approach to organizing the same thing and like different aspects of the same thing, I think is more healthy. I think
Yes,
it's a good way
I
of
think
looking
that
at it.
I think that the metaphor of the two parents and the child, I think, would be the easiest to understand. Okay,
Mm.
in the sense that what is common between the two parents, it is the love for their child.
Right.
That
Love is the key. That's the
love
key.
is
Yeah, yes,
love
yes,
is the
yes,
common stuff.
Yeah.
yes.
But the father would express his love in a masculine way, and the
Hmm.
mother would express her love in a feminine way. But both are loving.
I love that. That's good. Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that so
yeah,
much.
yeah.
And they're both parents.
And they're
And
both
both are
parents
parents.
equally. Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously. Yeah. Yeah.
It
And
was
they're both acting out
you
of
know
love. So that's the
just
key.
just just personal experience. I mean, I put myself in touch, if you like, with an aspect of nurturing simply by being a father. I mean, it was the way it turned out. I mean, I handled a lot of the responsibility of my son, when he was very young, and that was work relationships as much as anything else. I was getting home earlier. I could pick him up from school and spend time with him in a way that my wife couldn't. But I reveled in it.
Hmm.
I embraced it. I mean, I wasn't, over the top or anything like that, but I loved the role. And I mean, it fits in with, my work as a teacher as well, I suppose. There's a nurturing role there. But I've always felt that it's the integration of the two, the nurturing aspect, which you might want to call feminine, with the more masculine aspects, which was part of the epistemological journey. It was something you needed to learn. It gave you a better insight, if you like, into your partner, if nothing else, into what it meant to be a woman, as opposed to what it meant to be a man. I mean, I've always held that we have far more in common than we have as differences, but you can't not acknowledge that there are differences.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's a fun philosophical question to just work through. And a lot of people just don't give
It's
it
a
the time that it deserves.
Yeah. And let's not forget that sometimes we are in a receiving function and sometimes we are in the giving function. Okay. And the perfect metaphor is the sun and the moon. The sun is radiating energy and light, and the moon is receiving the energy and light. And in all of us, female or males, sometimes we are in a receiving position and sometimes we are in a giving position. So there's a dance between those two poles, which are perfectly natural for a living being like a human being.
In astrological traditions, Kwan, the idea of the sun and the moon is that the moon distributes the light of the sun.
Yes, yes. But
I mean, that's
before
the concept of reflection there.
exactly. But before distributing that light, the moon received the light
Yeah,
from the sun.
exactly. Yeah, which in some cases is interpreted astrologically, shall we say, as a subordinate position, but that's not always the case. Far from it.
And that's exactly what the poem 42 of the Tao Te Ching insisted upon, right?
Yeah.
There is no hierarchy between yang and yin. I read
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Each holding yang and held by yin, okay, whose powers balance the interaction brings all 10,000 to fruition. The problem is that people wanted to give more value to one side.
To one side, yeah.
But both sides have equal value, but not the same function, okay? And I think that we all adults here, the masculine sexual organ is penetrating and the feminine sexual organ is receiving. But does it mean that the masculine sexual organ is superior or the feminine sexual organ is superior? No, they are complementary.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question. Have there been like famous female Chinese rulers in history?
Yes, well, the famous Empress Wu Zetian, for example, she is the perfect equivalent of Catherine the Great of Russia, even if they live 1,000 years apart, or even more than 1,000 years, 12 centuries apart. But she is the Chinese Catherine the Great.
Hmm.
I guess what I'm saying, do the Chinese, do they have hang-ups with, women and men issues?
Okay, what is perceived by the Chinese is that women are equal to men, but they are not the same. Okay, women have the same dignity than man. Okay, and if there's one thing that you can say for upholding the Chinese Communist Party, or the Communist Party of China to be exact, is that since the communists, that rule coming from classical Chinese education has been perfectly enforced, in the sense that before, that is true that in Chinese traditional society, men were seen as superior. That is true, even if it was not the classical teaching, but sadly, in practical reality, during the Chinese Empire, men were perceived as being superior. But since the new China in 1949, the communists, how paradoxical and how ironical, the communists enforce perfectly that classical Chinese understanding that men and women are equal but different. They don't have exactly the same functions.
So there are a lot of women in the Chinese Communist Party.
Oh, yes. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
women,
and in
if there's a group in China that should be thankful to the CPC, these are the women.
yeah, there are plenty of female engineers, scientists, etc., etc. Very, very well-educated Chinese women contributing to the country at the moment. That's for sure. Even though we might know their names, etc., etc., there are plenty of them.
Yeah, I
Yes.
guess I knew that. I just needed to hear it from someone else.
And I would say that the major difference between India and China, for example, that the Indian women are not as educated than the Chinese women. I think that because there have been studies in developing countries that when you have educated women, that developing country will grow much faster than when there are not enough educated women. Because there's something with educated women that has been acknowledged by many studies in developing countries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that whole system of microcredits, etc., etc., that was developed in India and various parts of Africa was directed towards women.
Exactly. There's something.
Empowering the local women in the village, because that was seen as being the most effective, the most successful way of creating businesses and building communities, etc., by empowering the women, invariably with small amounts of money, etc., etc. But
well, I guess, but
nonetheless, they were the target.
That's the balance between these two extremes, right? Where the dishonesty of the microcredit system that came out of like Maurice Strong and the oligarchs of the IMF was that they wanted to give just enough microcredit to small countries to barely just eke a living by like painting a rock and like maybe like employing 2 or 3 members of your village to paint rocks to sell to like Western dollar stores.
Look, I'm not trying to justify that system.
No. It's important that you said that. it's
Yeah,
important that you
yeah.
said that because it's true. Like the rate of childbearing will reduce from like whatever it was, like 13 children per family, when women have like no education, no opportunity, like all their job is and purpose is to produce babies and maybe cook. And yeah, like that rate will produce will reduce as you give women the ability to like develop their minds and give them a role to play, in the world. But at the same time, the oligarchs they'll go to the other extreme and they'll say, well, look, that's why we should only have 1 billion people, because when women are given the natural equal status as men, um exemplified by these microcredits as their case studies, they'll say like, well, thus they won't produce babies, they'll maybe produce like far lower than the replenishment rate of the human species, and so we should only have 1 billion people. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Maybe there's like this balance between these extremes of making women, produce 20 babies in their lives, which is probably bad for your health, and producing like 0 to like maybe 1.2 babies, which is also gonna like it's lower, it's gonna reduce human population growth, invariably, because you still need 2.1 babies per family to replenish the species. And it's like maybe there's something where it's like more natural, more healthy. There's this maybe happy mean between the extremes, is a which I think also something that Mencius wrote about, right? Like the mean,
Yes,
the
absolutely.
harmonic mean.
But I
Um,
would say,
if you
and here I would like to play once again one of my catchphrases. Uh, if a people doesn't have an aristocratic oligarchy that would rule them with love and with good intention, you can spin any mumbo jumbo to justify weird policies. Okay, uh,
Hmm.
so I always come back to a devoted aristocratic oligarchy, and it's one of my new acronym. Devoted aristocratic oligarchy, DAO, is the Tao.
Well done, Quo. Well done. You're good at these acronyms. That's good.
I, lo- I love your acronyms, Kwan. Love your acronyms.
Yeah,
Of course, yes. Remember Tao and Debbie for today.
Yeah.
that's sharp. That's good. Yeah, no, I like this. I like this a lot. So let's do this. Let's you we've all got a lot to think about. I think this is really enriching for the mind and soul.
And
Um,
sadly, Matt, you're, the fact that we haven't been together for 2 months, it's must have taken me at least 30 minutes when we started to date to get into the routine,
it,
to start thinking the right way again, to absorb the material that's going to be presented here.
you're swimming well, man. We threw you in the water
Yeah,
and
look,
you're drowning for a
uh,
bit. And now you're swimming. It's good. It's good.
like I said, the last 2 months have been rather hectic. I mean, I had a very bad cold, so my voice is, I've still got a bit of a cough and everything like that, but
But you're still
losing the computer, but I'm
yeah,
still
and
battling.
you're still a great speaker. We love your narrations are
Yeah,
always,
yeah.
or I get good feedback when people are listening to these readings on driving to work and sitting in traffic, and I get people who are very thankful
Yeah,
that Paul is there to read. So thank you, Paul.
well, I'm happy to do that. If that's the only service that I provide, I'm more than happy to do it. One quick comment on that one, Matthew. When we do this next week, when you put the print up on the screen, because I'm likely to be still stuck with my laptop here, is there any chance you can make the back screen white, not black?
No idea. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm still
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Just
What do you mean? What do you mean? Like make the back screen white? What does that mean?
but white, so that the writing stands out more. I mean, I'm pleading old
Oh,
age here, both my eyes and everything like that. I mean,
yeah.
I'm sort of sitting here trying, I'm aware of the fact there's a camera on when I'm reading, and I'm trying not to look like this, with my
Oh,
face
so
right.
you're saying right now you see black on the back screen and
Yeah,
white.
and white writing. Yeah, yeah. It's just easier
Oh,
if I see white and black. Look, it's not a big deal. I can
I
cope
see.
with it.
Yeah,
It's just,
maybe.
at
I'm not
one
too sure.
point I was,
I'm using Cynthia's computer right now,
yeah,
and that's
yeah,
the way
yeah,
it's formatted for the eyes. But maybe
yeah.
it
Like
could.
I said, it's not a big deal. Knowing that it's going to happen next week, I might even get some. I've got better glasses than these. These are
Okay.
just cheap reading glasses. So, Okay,
Quan,
so
thank you so much. Thank you, Ken. Thank you,
Wait,
everybody. Oh,
wait.
Ken's got a thought. All right,
Yep.
Ken, go.
Paul, you're Australian, is this correct?
originally, yes, yeah. Yeah. I live in the
Well,
Philippines, of course.
here's raising a glass to your countryman, Julian Assange, and his liberation, okay?
I did a gig on national TV on Tuesday night, and I have to say it's one of the better performances that I've done in such a situation because I was high all day.
Yeah,
I got news
I'm
of it
still
from
high.
a
I'm
I
still
got
high,
new,
okay?
I got news of it from a rather obscure news service that just popped up, and I thought I wonder if it's true, and couldn't find any verification, and sent a message to my son. He said, "Dad, I think your sources are useless again." Blah 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 blah. Half an hour later, he got back to me and said, "It's all over the news. It's all over the news." Blah blah blah, which it has been for the last 24 hours. And of course, as an Australian, I dare say, and as somebody who's signed 1 million petitions on his behalf, donated money, and done all sorts of things because his situation was such a gross injustice. I just can't help but compare with the actual source of the information that he published. Chelsea Manning, who's well and truly out of jail. Yes, she suffered and everything like that, but everything to do with the original criminal act, has been forgiven, and yet Julian was persecuted for fully 12
Yeah, well,
years. I
his
mean, it was
liberation
just,
was legally flawed, but it was
yeah.
definitely welcomed by everyone. And
It'll be
But
interesting. I mean,
God
there's a
bless
lot of
him, man.
articles. Yeah, a
I
lot of
hope
articles starting to appear now as to what happens next, and I'm just going to shut up on that one and say, look, let's give Julian a chance to breathe, for crying out
yeah,
loud, and to
yeah,
recover his humanity as a member of his own family. So,
yeah.
yeah.
yeah, a
I, I
bright
I
day.
think I think he was perfectly right for having accepted the deal. Of course, he have suffered enough. I'm very happy. However, don't you see that it's so revealing of
Oh yeah,
the reality that justice is the advantage of the powerful, as
yeah,
Thrasymachus said to Glaucon in the first book of the Republic.
yeah. It's a Pyrrhic victory.
Yes,
Yeah, he had to plead guilty
And
to a crime that he knows he's innocent of.
yes.
yes, yes, justice is the
Setting the
advantage of
precedent
the
for
powerful.
future journalists, unfortunately, who will be charged under the Espionage Act.
Yes,
And past journalists who have too.
Yes.
absolutely.
Comment by Judge Napolitano, one of the guys that I see a fair bit of, saying that as a judge himself, he was certainly involved in plenty of guilty pleas that were really done simply to end a situation, not to create justice per se.
Right. It's not justice.
No, but he's free.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just in a
God
sense,
bless
even
him,
though
man. That's all I can say.
it's just in a sense, even though it might not be justice.
Mhm.
Anyway, that was a good little victory, a very solid victory. I don't care how Biden spins it and expects that it's going to produce a jump in his polls or anything like that. I think the majority of people in the world, including this community, will see it slightly differently. Long overdue.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I had been seeing too is that his lawyers have said that there are no bans on him whatsoever. There are no restrictions on what he can say and what he might say. Let's see how that plays out in the future, because I certainly don't think he will do anything to endanger himself and put himself in the crosshairs again, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out now.
Yeah.
Anyway, great to
Yeah.
be back in action, folks. I'll practice my reading skills between now and next week, and I'll go back and review all the material that I've taken notes on from Quan. Unfortunately, a lot of my stuff is on the hard drive on the computer that I'm getting rebuilt, so I won't have physical access to it for a while. So
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
no, I don't. I don't. I like to refresh my memory. It's been 2 months, Matthew, and as I said, I'm getting old.
You did great. You did great. Quan, thank
Well,
you
I've
so much
gone
for
back.
sharing. And Quan, honestly, like, I appreciate your guidance in interpreting and just navigating through this very dark forest, which is so valuable to be able to really explore. And no, it's good. And I'm looking forward to next week as well. I think by next week we're gonna finish this, and maybe when we're done this essay, we will finally read some Sun Tzu, perhaps, or maybe something else and then Sun Tzu. But no matter what, Sun Tzu is now on our list, guaranteed as something we need to
Oh,
read. I need to read, but we all need to read.
If you're enthusiastic for Sun Tzu, yes, definitely we should read chapters 1 to 6.
All right, let's do it. Sorry, that's on the menu now for those who are watching on YouTube who want to jump into Sun Tzu. Keep this in mind, and then next week we'll finish the current reading, and we'll do that. So thank you, Quan. Thank you, everybody,
Yep.
and till next week.
Nice to be back.
Yes,
We'll see you next week. I'll be better prepared next week.
Amen. All right, bye.
Thanks, guys.
Sure.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.